What's up everyone, Path of Exile 2 is a pretty complex game, and as a new player it can be really hard to understand how to make your character stronger and what are the right choices to make when you're building out your character. So today I just wanted to go over a guide for new players, for people who haven't played a Path of Exile game before, on what are the right choices and what does everything mean. So when you're looking at like your skill gems and you're looking at these DPS numbers, 4,000 DPS, where's that coming from? Why do I have 4,000 DPS and how do I get more? What do I choose to make this number go up? And then how do we deal more damage and how does that damage work? So whether you're playing physical, fire, lightning, what should you be looking for? I'm going to go over the character sheet as well, armor, evasion, energy shield, and your defenses. So you're not just getting one shot as you play through the story. The bosses should be hard, but they shouldn't be one-shotting you. So we'll go over that. And then finally, spirit. You can unlock like over 100 spirit just from playing through the campaign. And there's some tips for that as well. So we'll go over all that. So let's get straight in. Okay, so first let's talk spirit. So spirit sits in the bottom right above your mana. So if I open my skill gem and I turn off my spirit ability, I've got 147 spirit. If I turn this on, it reserves an amount of spirit. So now I only have 37. This isn't something that goes up and down in combat. You either reserve your spirit and you have access to the persistent buff, or you turn it off and you don't have access to it. So you always need to make sure you have enough spirit to accommodate the abilities you're trying to use. You'll unlock spirit either by being a witch, you'll get it straight away, or if you're playing through the story, you go to the hunting grounds in Act 1, you go down to Freyhorn, and there's a mob there called the King in the Mists. You beat that boss and you get 30 spirit. It's an item, you click it, you unlock spirit for the first time, and you get your first skill gem. You'll get a skill gem, which will be a persistent buff skill gem. It says here, look, creates a persistent buff skill gem. So you'll get one of these, and they look different to the normal ones slightly. They're slightly different, look. So you'll get one of these ones, and that will unlock your first skill gem for spirit. So that's the first time. And then if you go to Act 3, there's a place here off of the Infested Barrens. You go to Azak Bog, and there's a mob here called the Bog Witch. That will give you 30 spirit too. And then when you get to Crawl mode in Act 3 again, you go to the exact same place. You go to Azak Bog again in Act 3, and you'll get more spirit. And you fight another boss in that exact same zone, and you get another chunk of spirit. They're your 3 spirit unlocks. And then you can roll spirit on your gear as well. You can get it on your chest piece. You can get it on a scepter, if you have a scepter. You can get it on your amulet. And there is also, I believe, a unique ring that can roll spirit too. So yeah, there's lots of ways to get spirit. I'll show a minion build as well. The more spirit you have on a minion build, the better, because you can scale every gem higher. So on one minion ability, you can just keep turning it up and have more and more of that minion, and it just takes up more and more and more spirit reservation. So yeah, the more spirit on a minion build, the better. And that does kind of go on other builds too, because you can have more buffs. Think a warrior build, you can have more of these persistent buffs. Okay, now I've jumped on the warrior. Let's talk through damage. I'm going to make myself a bit smaller here. Okay, so let's get the damage up. So if we go in our skill gems, you can see everything has a damage number associated to it. 1,200 for Mace Strike, down at Sunder at 924. Where is that 924 coming from? Let's go through it. So if we open it up here, you can see more details. Now, you can see average damage 924. That means when you do that attack, you are dealing average 924 damage to the enemies. Why? Well, first, our main hand, let's go through that first. Our main hand is dealing 448 to 953. But if you look at your weapon, you're only dealing 68 to 141. So where is that number coming from? That's the thing I want to go over. So if you think of damage, think of it like a set of stages. Think of it like a conveyor belt. As you're going along, you're going to hit certain stages where damage gets chucked on. So damage is getting added on all the way along, and then at the end, there's a chance to multiply that damage. So the first big addition of damage, the first big source of damage is our weapons themselves, our gear themselves. So let's talk through the stages of where our damage comes from and where we can get more damage. So stage 1 is our weapon. You can see here we do 68 to 141 physical damage with 66% increased physical damage. The main thing to learn about how to get more damage out of your weapons is look at your damage type. If you are making a pure fire build, try and get more fire damage on your weapons. I'm playing a pure physical build, so I'm looking for as much physical damage as possible. On my other weapon, I have like 112% increased physical damage and some physical damage gems. You want as much physical damage as possible on a physical damage build. That's our first source of damage and where we're looking for our big chunks of power increase. Okay, so our second source of damage, the second way to deal more damage and make this number go up, is our skill gem. If you look at the skill gem here, Sunder, it has an attack damage of 267%. So we're getting a massive damage increase from this gem. That's a massive amount of our damage on that gem. Getting your gems a higher level, gives you more damage. Simple as that. And picking the gems that deal the most damage and using abilities that deal the most damage is a good thing to do. If I was using Bone Shatter, I'd only be getting 174%. So it's important to make sure you're using abilities that deal a lot of damage if you want to deal a lot of damage. Okay, and then our third source of damage is coming from our support gems. So you can see here on the support gems, we have 3 on this one, and one of them is splitting the ability in 2, which reduces damage. So if we took that out, we'd actually be at 1,500 for just 1. But we're having 3, so we have that in. The next 2 are given as a damage increase. So you can see here we're going for 35% more melee physical damage. Take that out, and you can see that damage number comes down. If we pop this up here, we take this out, and we see this damage comes down. If we take both of them out, we see this comes down a lot. We see the damage comes down significantly to 500. So that's the third place we're getting a big source of damage. And this translates to any build. If you're playing fire, lightning, you're playing a monk, you're playing a sorcerer, it's the same thing. Your damage is coming from the things you're picking. It's just easier to show you on a physical, melee, smooth, simple-brained build. Okay, so that's the next thing. Okay, the final place to think about when you're looking at where's this damage coming from is the passive tree. The passive tree can make or break your character. So if we go through the passive tree, things like this, damage with two-handed weapons. You know what? I'm going to show you. I'm going to go to the refund guy. Let's go to the refund guy. And I'll show you what happens as you change things. So if we look at this, you see here, we have 40% increased damage with two-handed weapons. If I take this off and refund it, look at that. The damage goes down. Why does the damage go down? Because this, if we look over it, requires a two-handed weapon. So you see, we're using a two-handed weapon to use this ability. We're using a two-handed weapon to use this ability. So if we have damage increase with two-handed weapons, this goes up. So it's very important to understand where your damage is coming from. You might think, oh, well, strength. Strength is going to be where all our damage is coming from, right? Let me show you. If we go here and we go strength, no damage increase. A lot of people think damage increase is coming from strength. It's not. If you click strength here, strength is an attribute to equip gear, but also provides armor. Everyone's strength gives life. It does not grant damage to skills. So it's very important. I would really, really recommend while you're playing through the game to have this window open while you're picking things. Have this window open as you're going over your abilities. Hold down Alt and click them. Hold down Alt and hover over them and see what the damage is coming from and what the things you're picking is actually affecting. One of the biggest, not going to name any names, but I'm seeing some people who recommend leveling as a fire warrior and they say, oh yeah, you should get this ability as you're leveling. It converts all your damage and you get fire damage and then you do loads more damage. Look what happens if we just take fire damage. So why have we lost all our damage? Where's all our damage gone? Well, this was a damage conversion. 75% of damage is converted to fire and we deal no non-fire damage. All of our physical damage on our that we're getting from this build has now turned into fire. So we now have all this fire and nothing else. So if you're following a build guide blindly and the person says, oh yeah, convert this to lightning for more damage, be very careful that you understand where your damage is coming from and they understand where your damage is coming from, because you can ruin your build. This is going to make all of your fire abilities a lot stronger. But everything else is going to suffer. Everything else is going to feel a lot weaker because that's how damage conversion works. In Path of Exile 1, which I think some people still think the game works like, you could double dip. So say you have two things. You have physical damage and fire damage. In PoE 1, you could double dip. You could boost your physical damage, convert to fire damage, and boost your fire damage. And you were just a truck. You were just big damage. In this game, you can't double dip. You can have high physical damage, or you can convert to fire damage, boost your fire damage, and all the boosts to physical don't count. So you have your base physical and your boosted fire, or you have boosted physical and no fire conversion. There are certain things that do convert, like on your weapons themselves, they convert over. But yeah, it's very important to understand damage conversion before you start messing with it, before you start, just blindly taking things like this in the talent tree. As you're leveling, the refunds are quite cheap. So just play through, go around your, I'm looking, where do my next points want to go for? Maybe I go in here and I go for two-handed. See if there's any two-handed abilities. Oh, this is increased damage to two-handed abilities. Let's check this on. Oh, look, we just got more damage. So it's really good idea to have this open if you're going to try and go around a certain ability. I'm trying to play this ability around thunders and leaps and slams, like the rolling slam, the leap slam, and the sunder. So yeah, try and try and have a good idea. And I definitely advise a new player to focus on one damage type. I definitely say focus on one damage type, whether that be converting everything to lightning, focus on lightning, converting everything to fire, focus on fire, or staying physical, just stay physical. That would be my advice. Okay, now let's talk through defenses and not getting one shot by bosses. And I will say, if you're finding this useful, do consider subscribing to the channel. I make a ton of guides and builds and things like this, so hopefully you find it useful. Do consider subscribing if you do. Okay, so when we look at defenses, what's the best thing to take? Armor, energy shield, evasion. Let's go through it. Number one, in my opinion, the king of defenses is armor. It's the reason that warriors can stand in front of a boss and take multiple hits. Armor is, I mean, the easiest thing to do is to hold down Alt and read every single thing in the game. But basically, there are different types of damage. So I've mentioned the multiple damage types in the game. There are multiple things that are mitigated by different things. But armor, it reduces physical damage. So melee and ranged physical damage, I believe, but it doesn't do anything against the other types of fire, lightning, all that sort of stuff. So this is your chunky, stand in front of the boss and take a swipe. You can have up to 90% damage reduction from armor. If you go onto the number itself, you can see here, I've got 740 armor, which is a 41% physical damage reduction. If that was 90, physical attacks would do nothing. Physical attacks would just brush off. You're just going to get melted by the elemental abilities. So yeah, armor is incredible and is definitely the king of staying alive. On the sorcerer, let's talk energy shield. So energy shield is different to armor in that protects from almost everything. It's not just physical attacks. It's not just slams and it's not just, swipes and things coming from the boss. It's everything. Anything that comes at you other than bleeds and poisons are caught by your energy shield 100%. So if you have 1,000 energy shield and a 900 damage fireball hits you, you're chilling. So that energy shield is very, very, very powerful. The only things that go through your energy shield are bleeds and poisons, and chaos does twice as much damage to your energy shield. So yeah, energy shields are very, very, very powerful, which you might think, why don't you have one then? Well, there's another cool thing you can do with your energy shield. If I go on the passive tree, a really cool thing on the passive tree, we have this over here, converts all energy shield to mana. So you can even turn your energy shield into mana, giving us like a ton of mana. I've got like 2,000 mana on this character. And then you can do this, damage is taken from mana before life. So you can turn your entire energy shield into mana. So I had like all that energy shield, turned it into mana, 2,000 mana. And now an enemy has to get through my entire mana bar, 2,000, and then through my entire health bar of 1,000 before I take any damage, which is a really interesting way to play the game. So energy shield might not look as good as armor, but there's a lot more you can do with it, and it's very fun. And the final way that's going to be getting you is your resistances. So you can see here, these are your player resistances, and these are calculations that are performed when a magical attack is done on you. So say a cold attack, say a frostbolt is hitting you. If you have 10% cold resistance, 10% of the damage is mitigated off before it hits you. There's a calculation, but think of it as 10% of the damage is mitigated before you take it. This can go as high as the soft cap, I believe, is 75%. I think there's a higher cap than that you can get to, but the soft cap is 75%. So you can resist like 75% of elemental damage, which is huge when you consider there's 4 different elements to start building your resistances to. Some of the best endgame gear will be stacking really high resistances. Mine are terrible. Additionally, as you're playing through the game, your base goes down. So as you're playing through the game, your base resistances go down. I think it's like 10% a stage or something. So the amount of resistances you need on your gear needs to go up. So I've got some lightning resistance on my gear, and I'm still in the negative, which means when I get hit by a lightning bolt, I'm taking an extra 17% damage, kinda. So yeah, that's another thing that's going to be really getting you. If you're fighting like the lightning boss in Act 2 and you've got bad lightning resistance, you'll be getting one shot. So yeah, they're the main things you want to be focusing on, and most of that's going to come from your gear. Okay, so that's our resistances. Now let's talk about enemy resistances. So similarly, when enemies have a positive resistance, we deal less damage. When they have a negative resistance, we deal more damage. I can show you really well on this skill gem here. If we go into this one here, for example, look at the enemy's health bar, and in the bottom right, they'll have a little icon. If it's like that color there, that means they are resistant to that ability. And then when it goes red, that means that they have a negative resistance, meaning we deal more damage. So what you want to be doing is, as you're fighting the enemy, say you're using ice, and you might see an enemy with a little icicle in the bottom right of their health. That means they're resistant to ice. If you turn that red, they now have a negative resistance and you can blast them with more ice damage. So if you go into your passive tree, so I've got a lightning build, so let's talk about lightning. So when you're looking to deal elemental damage, you don't just want to be throwing raw spells at people. You want to be getting their resistance down first. One way to do that is with exposure. So lightning exposure, for example, here will reduce their exposure to lightning, making them more vulnerable to lightning damage. And you can hover over it here and it says, by default, that is minus 20% to lightning resistance, which is huge. So if they're at 0, they go to minus 20. If they're at 20, they go to 0. So you get massive damage increase from getting that down. On top of that, this node here as well does lightning penetration. So you penetrate 18% of their resistance. So it's really important to make sure you're getting nodes like that rather than just going here and getting increased damage. Because as good as that is, having 20% extra lightning damage from that node there is much more beneficial. And as you're coming up to things that have resistances, you're really going to feel it. You can also take things like this that give increased exposure, 30%. Massive. So yeah, definitely have a look around and make sure you're not just doing raw damage. You're taking the actual things that reduce those damages too. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about here. I hope this has helped. I hope this has helped you feel like you know how to build your character a little bit better. Try and focus, especially as a new player, try and focus on one damage type. Try and focus on one of the types of damage, you know, physical, fire, lightning, things like that. Try and just funnel down one, get enemies weak to them, and just try and push your damage numbers up as high as you can and make smart choices to make those numbers go up. And if you see something that doesn't look right, make sure your damage hasn't gone down. But yeah, that's the video. If you have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them in the comments. But that's it from me. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you like this style of content, and I'll wrap it up here.